It's Tuesday, May 26, 2020, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the live stream show. I'm David Menzies, and my guest co-host is Sheila Gunn-Reid, reporting from somewhere deep in the heart of northern Alberta, where I think the snow has finally melted. And, of course, as you know, when you tune in here regularly, you see the big boss man himself, Ezra Levent, but Ezra's still working on that super special project, and it's going to be worth the wait, folks. I'm telling you that right now. And Sheila, am I right on this Taco Tuesday that things are warming up a little in the north of Alberta?
Well, kind of. It snowed on Friday, and then it was 21 degrees yesterday, and then today it's looking pretty ugly again out there. But this is like spring in Alberta. You never know what you're going to get. We have like 4 minutes of summer sometime in August, and then snow by September again. But this is what you get. And that's probably why the land was free to my ancestors.
Now, I know you're quite the huntress. So because it gets so cold and snowy there for such prolonged periods, do you see any of the cool winter animals like the Arctic lynx, that sort of thing? I mean, or is it just the kind of animals we just see here in southern Ontario, but we have livable weather?
Yeah, well, you get to see the animals whose coats change. So you get to see the ermine, the jackrabbit when the coats change. You actually get to see that because they are white for a very long period of time. But wow. I don't know. We don't have raccoons. You guys have raccoons, which is kind of fun.
Well, when animals change their coats, that's when I know I am too far away from the equator. But Sheila, heaven forbid anyone thinks they've tuned into old CBC reruns of Hinterland's Who's Who here. You're going to tell the folks what it is we're going to attempt to do here today, correct?
Yeah, we're wandering dangerously into CBC country there. So what you can do with us today is join us in a super chat. So on the, I believe depends on how your computer's set up, but on the right side of your screen, you'll see the live chat where you can engage with each other and remark on what we're talking about. But if you'd like to support the work that we do here at Rebel News, because we'll never take a dime from the government, we'll never take a dime from Justin Trudeau, unless it's, him being forced to pay our legal bills. You can pitch in into what's called a super chat, and it'll highlight your comment or query or concern, and I'll see it out of the corner of my eye. And if I miss it, which is, there's a good chance that I will, producer Justin in studio will email it to me or message it to me, and David or I will read it out loud and remark on it. But it's a great way for you to support the work we do completely willingly, as opposed to having it forcibly extracted from your family's bottom line, like the $1.5 billion that goes to the CBC every year, which, by the way, they've taken that $1.5 billion, I noticed, and they've broken a story that David Menzies, with his microphone on a hockey stick and his fedora, have been breaking for months now. They've decided that thousands of people are still flying into Canadian airports amid the COVID-19 restrictions. Thanks, guys. David's been down there for months reporting on this. David, you're down there these days probably once a week, but in the height of the pandemic, when things were changing very fast, you were down there like 3 times a week. Taking your health into your hands. However, it's pretty clear from all your footage you're very careful, and I think you're kind of uptight about that kind of stuff, which is good. But you did all that on our little shoestring budget. Thanks in no small part to the people who pitch in our super chat. So that, folks, those are your donations at work. It took CBC $1.5 billion and 2 months to catch up to David Menzies.
Well, you're so kind, Sheila, and at the risk of us further patting ourselves on the back, last week also, that was the front page story of the National Post, which, of course, is a recipient of the $595 million newspaper fund, which was announced before Wuhan virus. That's going to be topped up, I guarantee you. And also, front page of the Toronto Star, the story about 5800 Yonge Street, aka the Willowdale Welcome Centre, which we've been going to for months now, and they broke the news that there's a huge outbreak of Wuhan virus amongst the refugees and staff there. And Sheila, it's staggering because their resources compared to what we have, right, is, I mean, it's an elephant versus an ant. And yet, what are they doing? Are they all locked up in the office or probably at home? They're not getting out in the field like we're tending to do and actually getting the story. I was just stunned that they were almost passing this off as though it was their scoop when the video evidence shows that, like I said, for months, I had been going to 5800 Yonge Street and exposing I don't know if you want to call it a racket, but certainly the disregard for personal protection equipment, social distancing, plexiglass partitions. And I'm not picking necessarily on refugees here, Sheila, because the focus of the report was that this building, which you can see behind this gentleman from Nigeria, who's now being pulled away by somebody who got a look at my mic flash. That used to be the former North York Hydro headquarters. It's an office building. Sheila, if you or I, as entrepreneurs, went to the city of Toronto and said, can we buy that building and turn it into a bed and breakfast? Absolutely no. And with good reason, because that's the exact type of business of structure that the health experts warn is a breeding ground for the Wuhan virus. It's open air. It was never meant as a sleepover facility. And when I went, and it was comical, I was putting my iPhone against the window to record the violations, and then like somebody just stuck their butt against the inside of the window, so I couldn't film anymore. I was just getting visuals of a brand of blue jeans. So yeah, it's I guess in a way it's a compliment, I guess, to the work we're doing. And I will once again take this opportunity to give myself a Steve Lombardi pat on the back. What do you think about that?
I think it's funny to watch. Like, it's getting predictable now, the pipeline, right? So we run out and we cover these stories, whether it's Roxham Road or the airplanes or refugee hotels. And I've done the exposés on refugee hotels. I don't go on site like you do. It's a little bit difficult for me to do that from the middle of Nowheresville, Alberta, but I do the access to information reporting. I ask the questions, I get the documents, I do that sort of stuff. Not nearly as exciting as you, but I think it's just as valuable. Sheila, you know, and folks, at the risk of this sounding like the Mutual Admiration Club, there is no better journalist in Canada than Sheila Gunn Reid in going through those I don't have the patience for it. It's kind of like a gold prospector back in the days. You're going through endless sifting of, dirt and grime, and then finally you find that little nugget that's actually worth some money. And that's what Sheila does. And it's no less valuable than us going out into the field, 100%. Oh, it is dry, too, because the government makes sure that these things are not searchable by keyword. You actually have to read every single page most of the time. But it's funny that, we run out and we cover these things. We get called racist for covering these things, like actually just reporting on the things that are happening at Roxham Road or at these refugee facilities or at these refugee hotels. We just report the facts and the viewer can make their mind up for themselves. Our viewers are the smartest and the most generous, by the way, but generally the smartest. And so we do that. And then 6 months later, the mainstream media goes, aha, we have a scoop. And they report on the exact same story that we do. And then 2 weeks later, the Conservative Party of Canada, who does their best to distance themselves from us because we're just a little too spicy, once our stories get whitewashed through the lens of the mainstream media, then it's perfectly fine then for the Conservative Party of Canada to remark on them, the exact same stuff that we reported on a shoestring budget like 6 months earlier. It's quite funny, actually, to watch it all unfold, and it's getting kind of formulaic, to be honest with you. It's
so sad. Two things are brought up. Well, the Conservative Party, and I don't know if this is inside baseball stuff, but evidently the camp of Peter MacKay reached out to us and they said, Mr. MacKay's not saying no to going on the rebel, but he's not saying yes either. Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that the kind of leader you'd love in a battlefield, right? Or, captaining a ship. It is the opposite of leadership. And you mentioned the race card. I just as I was coming in, I was forwarded this. Actually, it was by Lady Menzoid, because she said, you're not going to blanking believe this. And Sheila, I don't know if Mr. Producer has it. It's a Toronto, there you go, look at that. Mostly white COVIDiots at Trinity Bellwoods Park think the rules don't apply to them. They're right. And that's, by the way, look at Sheree. Oh, can you go down a second there? Thank you, Mr. Producer.
Yeah.
Sheree Pradikar, she is, get a load of this, Sheila. We didn't Photoshop this, everybody. She's the race and gender columnist, right? Now, here's the thing. I'm not going to dispute, because the photographic evidence is there. It is predominantly white, 100%. Here's the thing, Sheila. If that gathering was a mass congregation of brown Hindus or black Muslims, would that receive a single line of copy in the Toronto Star, much less leading with the headline, and also the connection that, well, if you're white, you're a COVIDiot. Here's the proof in the pudding. What do you make of this kind of coverage from the largest newspaper in Canada, Sheila?
The largest newspaper in Canada that takes bailouts from Justin Trudeau's government to the tune of, I think it's $144,000 a week. I'm probably getting that number wrong, but I've seen Ezra tweet it a few times. But also, aren't they a penny stock? Like they are worth less than bankrupt airlines. It's a terrible state of affairs, and it seems like it's almost beyond parody, doesn't it? If I were to say, okay, well, I'm going to go into a career in the arts, and then I'm going to go off to Ryerson to do journalism, and I'm going to graduate to become the race and gender columnist at the Toronto Star, my family would be laughing, because it sounds like it's just like a conservative joke you tell, about how you want your kids to do better and be better. Make sure you get a trade, or you could end up as the race and gender columnist at the Toronto Star, at a penny stock newspaper. But this is what somebody does for a job, and I guess God love her for being gainfully employed, I suppose. But I generally like to play, let's replace the race and see how it sounds. And so if we the mostly brown COVID idiots, there's a certain sting there that we shouldn't be pointing out. And I don't know how you look at that photo and you're like, oh, all white people, let's write about it. That's the least of the things that are important about what was happening in Trinity Bellwood. That's the least of what was happening. It was people who were, if you want to talk about power dynamics, let's talk about how a bunch of sneering, uppity people with cottages are looking down their elitist noses at people who can't even afford backyards. This is a class issue, but it's definitely not a race issue.
Oh, yeah, indeed. I mean, and certainly Ezra yesterday on the live stream, Sheila, he went to task with the former Much Music VJ. Remember Erica M., who was basically, finger pointing at Ezra, like, come on, stop bullying people about trying to maintain public safety. And Ezra quite rightly noted that all these people, and regardless of race, are cooped up for 2 months in a less than 700 square foot condo. In other words, Sheila, your worst nightmare come to pass. Suffering from cabin fever. They want to get out. And by the way, Erica M., what was she doing on the weekend? Well, going to Cleveland House, and I think it's, $1,000 a night up in cottage country to stay there. So again, one rule for thee and one rule for me. But I got to say, Sheila, maybe a hardcore Toronto Star reader is upset with that column, because she is the race and gender column. She didn't, estimate that 51% of the people at Trinity Bellwoods Park that day were male, so it wasn't stupid white males, to play both the race and the gender card. And so there's probably a constituency of Star readers that are upset with that. But Mr. Producer says, enough of me babbling on. We have some money-making super chats, I believe.
Yes, and before I get to these super chats, I just want to point out that David and I generally do better at this than Ezra Levant, and that's not a slight. That's not a slight at the boss. Again, I want to point out that just means that the boss is really good at cultivating great talent like David and myself. And, it all goes in the same place anyway. So
I'm playing the Sergeant Schultz card here, Sheila. I don't want to get in any more trouble. I know nothing. I saw nothing.
Yeah, you're a real great friend, David. You're just throwing me right under the bus. Okay, we've got one from Proud Boys Calgary. My friend Justin gives us $6.99 Canadian, says there's an old saying, if you don't like the weather in Alberta, just wait a minute. Daily reminder, CCP must be destroyed. Isn't that the truth? I spend all summer frantically worrying about my tomato plants. Like, I worry about the future of my tomato plants more than I worry about the future of my kids, because my kids are more resilient and hardy, and I've instilled in them values. But these tomato plants, do I cover them? Do I move them? What do I do? Have I watered them? Have I overwatered them? It's the weather in Alberta. It's driving me crazy, and the emotional roller coaster of tomato plants is becoming too much for me.
But Sheila, it doesn't just drive you crazy. It frightens and confuses some Hollywood celebrities, because Proud Boys Calgary, of course, that's the part of the province where you can have a Chinook in the wintertime.
Yes.
And wasn't it Leonardo DiCaprio when they were filming The Revenant in that part of the country, and a Chinook came in, and he couldn't believe this heat blast, and he was getting overly excited and concerned that this is a sure sign of global warming. I'm witnessing it. And what I so loved was the Alberta film crew were playing along with the fear.
Yeah.
People who've seen Chinooks all their lives, and they're going, there you go.
Yeah.
And there you go. There's Leonardo. Isn't that amazing, right? Yeah.
I thought that was so great, because nobody pointed out to him, okay, well, these things have been around with a name for such a long time that we've named a salmon after them. They are just like, yep, it's global warming. You better tell everybody, Leonardo. You warn the world about what's going on here. And then he's just completely raked over the coals while he finishes making the rest of his bear gore porn movie. I watched it and I didn't enjoy it.
Could you imagine had Greta Thunberg been there? She would have needed CPR. She would maybe never recover from seeing a Chinook happen in Alberta.
She's a little vegan waif. She would never survive a winter in this province anyway. She would just die. So since she is, created in God's image, I don't want her to die suffering from the weather here. It's best she just never comes back. We've got one from John T. Thingus, gives us $2 Canadian. I blame Alberta for CBC's Heartland. Yes. I've watched about 30 seconds of Heartland, and it's so stereotypically CBC, but also what CBC thinks of Alberta. It's like Anne of Green Gables on the prairie. I don't know. I don't like it.
Well, Sheila, I've never recovered from CBC canceling Little Mosque on the Prairie, so maybe I will tune into this thing.
No. Skip right over it. We've got one from Sharp Shooter 40 years ago. Gives us $4. I don't see a super chat. Thank you very much. We've got one from the Burbinski, gives us $10 Canadian. Your opinion on what may become government mandatory mask wearing, especially since experts are hugely divided on their effectiveness. In some cases, stores such as Costco have mandated to enter. David, you've been wearing a mask for a very long time, since the beginning of this. What do you have to say?
Well, you know what? Not so often anymore, Sheila. I will still wear the mask and the gloves and the goggles when I go to the airport to interview people getting off flights. And that's really because they are too. And I don't want to further scare them away. You know how my hair frightens and confuses CBC female reporters, which is why I now wear this hat. So I try to go native, so to speak. week. And I would wear that gear too, going to a long-term care facility, and I've gone to a couple of those, as you know, Sheila. And that is the point, isn't it? We know that this virus is very discriminating. We know that in Ontario, for example, 82% of the deaths are by elderly and infirm people in long-term care facilities, whereas the percentage of deaths for those 20 and under, well, it rhymes with hero, folks. So that's why when you see a bunch of fairly young people going out to Trinity Bellwoods Park by the thousands, the chances of any of those young, and judging by the photo, Sheila, healthy and white, I better throw that in for the star people, people contracting the Wuhan virus and dying, it is infinitesimally small. So that is why when I've gone now to 5 Queen's Park protests in a row in Toronto, almost nobody is wearing a mask, and I don't wear a mask either because the stats tell me that I'm not in my 90s and I'm not frail and I don't have a respiratory condition and I'm not confined to a long-term care facility. So I like those odds. I like those odds that I'm not going to get sick.
Yeah, I was just reading the stats are quite similar for Alberta. It might even be a little bit higher that our extended care facilities are really the hot zone for these sorts of things. So, yeah, here's the thing. If Costco makes you wear a mask to go into the store, Walmart doesn't. Yeah. Safeway doesn't. Loblaw, Superstore, they aren't so far. So if that's not something that you want to be forced to do, let your wallet do the talking and just go shop somewhere else, unfortunately. That seems to be the only thing that you can do if you disagree with those policies.
Right. Let your wallet do the talking, A. Or B, something I would probably do, but I just don't have time to get into these horrible lineups to get into these supercenters. Take the piss out of the policy by wearing a Halloween mask, which some people are doing. So you are complying, sort of, with the mask, but it's a gorilla mask or an alien or something, and those photos are circulating online, and I think they're hilarious. Some person behind a shopping cart in a supermarket, and they look like it's Halloween time. Right? I just love it.
David, I don't know if I've told this story on air before, but I go to the grocery store and, I've got hand sanitizer in my purse, I got it in my pocket, whatever, and I generally always do that because shopping carts are disgusting. We've known that for years. They're just gross. But I'm in the grocery store. I'm in Walmart, actually, and there's a lady in front of me and she's wearing a mask and she's wearing gloves. And, you have I'm trying to stay 6 feet back because I don't want to scare her, right? I'm just trying to be respectful because obviously she cares deeply about these things based on the fact that she looks like she just wandered out of a surgical operating room and she's looking at cake mix. But she's touching everything on the shelf, reading the ingredients, putting it back with her gloves.
Wow.
Then she pulls down her mask, scratches her nose with her gloves, puts her mask back up, and then continues to touch things. And I'm like,
thereby defeating the purpose.
She's defeated the purpose of everything she's got on her body right then. So it's okay to wear these things if you want to wear them. If you don't want to wear them, that's great too. But if you are, can everybody just exercise a little bit of common sense here?
And Sheila, can people, I don't know what the situation is in Alberta, but I can tell you it's pretty bad in Ontario. And, when you have a pandemic, it brings out the best and worst of people. And number one on my worst list, in fact, there are municipalities putting up signs on corners saying, do not do this, which is when somebody comes out of the supermarket and they have the mask and the gloves, they take them off and just throw them onto the ground. Like there's some kind of special PPE ferry that will come by later and pick them up and put them in a garbage can. That's disgusting. How do you think that's good to litter like that? You can't throw those in your trunk and dispose of them in your garbage can at home or the garbage can in the parking lot. It's really bad here, Sheila. And like I said, do you see that evidence where you are?
No, but maybe that has to do with just where I live. Despite what the mainstream media would have you believe about Alberta, we're not a bunch of earth-raping maniacs. There's not a lot of litter around, like in the ditches or in our parking lots. Everywhere you look is a garbage can. People generally use them. When I'm at Walmart, I don't see gloves laying. I think I've seen one glove laying on the ground, and it was just one lonely little glove. So I wonder if it fell out of somebody's pocket. It wasn't like two gloves that are like tied into each other. It wasn't like that. So maybe it's just because the progressives in Toronto are gross and don't really care about the earth.
And of course, if the Toronto Star were to report on this story I just mentioned, and if it's Shuri,
white people did it.
Yeah, it would be predominantly white litter bugs destroying the parking lot of Walmart. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Alberta's a different kind of cat. Because is it true you're still rat-free?
Yeah, we're rat-free since, I don't know, 1933 or something.
How do you know that? I lived in Alberta for 2 years, and everybody bragged about we don't have any rats, but just because you don't see the rats, does that mean they're not there?
We have Rat Patrol at the airport. Rat Patrol will visit, like, trucking facilities. They patrol the landfills that are near the Saskatchewan border, but our Rat Patrol also works in Saskatchewan to keep the rats over there so that they don't come our way. And on the other side, we have mountains, right? So the BC's rats are not going to climb a mountain and come over, but they do spot checks on trucking facilities, airports, whatever. I remember it must have been 10 years ago, they found a rat in a pop machine at the airport, and it was like the most catastrophic news Alberta had heard in a long time. And then they had a minor, probably, a dozen rats were found at I think it was Medicine Hat landfill, and they knew they had come in on garbage from Saskatchewan. Everybody's mad at Saskatchewan for a little bit, but that was taken care of. So yeah, it's just we didn't have them, we don't want them, we're not going to get them.
Now wait a second, Sheila, when you say Rat Patrol, are you referring to the TV series we used to watch when we were younger, you and I, with the the guy in the army jeep with the mounted machine gun? I mean, they were going after the Nazis, of course, but is that what they use for the rats in Alberta, that kind of Rat Patrol?
God, I hope so. I really
do. That's your dream vehicle, isn't it?
I'd work for the Rat Patrol. I would. If they let me drive that, I would. Where do I apply? Okay, we've got so many more Super Chat because we have the most generous viewers on the internet. And David, just so you know, we're like a half an hour into the show and we haven't really talked about any news whatsoever. Oopsie doodle. Okay. We've got one from Kane and Mark, gives us $5 Canadian. Have you guys considered having Kian on this show as a guest star? He's my favorite. You know what? He's one of my favorites too. For me, it's kind of easy because I have the green screen studio set up and all my software to Skype in and make it look nice and not like I'm in actually what I'm in, which is like a corner, a closet of my basement. But Kian's out on the road again. So that's kind of exciting. And I saw a little sneak peek of what Kian's up to today, and I think it is going to knock your socks off.
Wow, I can hardly wait. And Kian, it should be noted, he has offered, if any of us are tied up on that Tuesday or Thursday, to but you know what, Jill? I'm kind of like Ted Baxter from the old Mary Tyler Moore show. Do you remember that episode where it was discovered he had been at the TV station for 22 years and he had never taken one single vacation or sick day, and it was because he was terrified that his temporary replacement, would become permanent. So with my cold dead hands, I'm hanging on to the Tuesday, Thursday live stream.
Yeah, that's all I need is that little upstart Kian coming along and stealing my job. I'm not having it. No, Kian offers all the time because he knows that Tuesdays are the busiest day of the week for me. But this is, it's a fun hour and I like interacting with the people. It's fun to interact with people I'm not related to, which has been the last 75 days of my life. It's just like, oh, yeah, I'd like to talk to a stranger or someone who's peripherally associated with me, but not related by blood or marriage, which is literally all my human contact the last little bit. Carrying on, we've got one from BD, gives us $17. Thank you, Rebel News, for keeping us informed. God bless yours. Patriots and Thunder Bay are watching. Well, that's kind. Thank you very much. We're working very hard to keep you informed. The news never stops. Actually, I would say my biggest stress in a day lately is getting to all of the things that I want to get to. There's just not enough hours in a day. I know a lot of people are suffering from boredom during the lockdown, but as far as journalists go, there's just so much to do.
Oh, I agree. And you know, Sheila, I mean, and that's probably a good segue into our first story that we were supposed to talk about, which was Queen's Park protest number 5. And, you know, what I adore about those people coming out to the Queen's Park protest, basically it's demanding the Premier open up the economy as in fully, or as in a level that other provinces have. By the way, Alberta's ranked number 1 on the reopening the economy index, folks. Ontario, number 9. Only Newfoundland is worse. That's disgraceful for an allegedly conservative premier who ran on an election motto of Ontario open for business, because the numbers show precisely the other case. So I really don't know what's happened to Doug Ford. But there was this really surreal moment. We were packing up, and I was right behind a CTV camera truck, and it looked like the cameraman was actually asleep. And he certainly wasn't wading into the masses as Mocha, my cameraman, and I were. And people were walking by, and they were giving the finger and saying fake news. And at the same time, 2 individuals, I don't have their names, but God bless you, you're so kind, they stuffed $50 bills into my hands to give to Rebel News here. And can you imagine that, Sheila? You know, that the mainstream media is called out for what they are, and then you actually get unsolicited financial support. I mean, I always try to give it back, and they always say, I wish I could give you more. It's just incredible. But without further ado, maybe we should run some of the shenanigans that was happening at Queen's Park, because these are Ontarians that are asking to be treated like adults. And the Premier the day before said he's currently identifying as an 800-pound gorilla. He's mad as hell, not about the economy being locked down, Sheila, but that there's not enough Wuhan virus testing going on. Check it out.
To that.
That's ridiculous. Like, I mean, let people go out and make their living. This is what we're angry about, because the government shut the businesses down.
Whatever's going on with the whole COVID thing, it's here to stay, but it's not enough to shut down the entire world. It's not.
Now this is the trajectories of the flus and influenzas for the last 10 years. The red line is this year. You can see we've already had the second wave. Okay, we're on the down. It's following a normal trajectory. It's a little worse than normal. This was supposed to be just to prepare the hospitals. We've gone from free state to police state.
They double counted thousands and thousands of tests in United Kingdom. In USA, CDC officially announced that they actually mixed up a bunch of tests as well. And we know this has all been created to control the public, because the contact tracing is going to be mandatory and implemented across the whole country. Limited travel within your country, which is infringement on your Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
I mean, flu's out there, hantavirus is out there, pneumonia's out there, and we don't shut down the world for all those, and those affect and kill more per year than COVID has. If they're saying that it takes 2 to 7 years to launch a successful vaccine and they get it to us in less than that, that's sorry.
And sir, I see you've got some signs on your dog. What?
Bark, open the parks. They have started to open up parks, obviously, but they're still not opening playgrounds. Kids still got to play. I mean, coronavirus isn't going to live on a playground, and you're not going to get a mass spike from kids going out and playing together. When we were kids, we all used to go to parties when kids had chicken pox. Why? So we could all get chicken pox, so we could build an immunity to it, so that it wouldn't affect us later in life.
Well, indeed. I mean, there's not one reported case of an outdoor transmission, and we know the stats say that there's not a single person in this province under 20 that has died, and yet sleepover camps exist for the seniors. I'm talking long-term care homes, where 80 82% of the deaths have occurred.
We've completely failed our elderly in this province, and now we're basing a complete lockdown on a society over the deaths of people that you failed. So how does this even make any sense? I don't understand.
He's doing it.
Well, Sheila, all I can say is it's too bad that the race and gender columnist for the Toronto Star wasn't at Queen's Park, because she could have had two for the price of one that day. Mostly white protesters descend on the lawns of Queen's Park. But I digress. Anyways, it was heartwarming to see that. The protest grows every single week. That was the biggest by far. And they were so emboldened to march down College Street. By the way, a tip of the hat to the cops, Sheila, because they acted like you would like law enforcement to act. Let these people vent. Let them have their say. Don't run around giving them $880 tickets. So to the Toronto Police Service, you did another spectacular job, 5th week in a row. And I just want to say, like, we call it as we see it, Sheila, because we've had plenty of condemnation for those bylaw officers and those cops handing out those tickets. But we got to call it even. We got to, give them a good shout out when they do the right thing too, don't we?
Well, yeah. And I think a lot of that has to do with our Fight the Fines work, primarily your Fight the Fines work, pointing out the bad cops. It changes the behavior overall of the police force. And we definitely, like I say it all the time, I'm pro-cop, which is why I want to call out the bad apples in amongst them, because they should not be representative of the police force as a whole. But yes, our work on Fight the Fines, we've basically started our own civil liberties law firm to help people who have been slammed with these expensive, crazy fines that lack any common sense. Yep. Like Walter Matheson, if you're sitting alone in a car eating a muffin, how on earth are you endangering the public and thus in violation of the Emergencies Act? It's insane. And, Walter Matheson's story is not particularly all that different as far as how outrageous these things are. And I'm proud to say that we're helping people fight back. And I do think that those stories and our willingness to help people when they get hit with these expensive fines and the willingness of our people to crowdfund their legal fees, it's definitely changing how policing is done now.
And by the way, folks, if you don't know what Sheila is referring to in the case of Mr. Matheson, he's a New Brunswick gentleman who, as Sheila said, was having a coffee and a muffin in a parking lot in a car with rolled up windows and had an encounter with a police officer, which was tape recorded. That is nothing short of surreal. He's Mr. Officer Friendly and jovial. And then on a dime, he turns to actually using profanity. There was no crime. There was no health risk. I was very jealous of Sheila getting that story. I knew that was going to be the best story of the Fight the Fight. I was willing to drive to New Brunswick. I was so hot on that story. But nevertheless, Sheila did a great job, and you must go see it because seeing is believing, unfortunately.
I just wanted to also remark on when you said that somebody came or two people came and stuffed money in your hand. When I was covering the West Edmonton Mall sexual assault trial that was happening in Edmonton with regard to an alleged series of sexual assaults that took place in the water park, a Syrian refugee was accused of assaulting some young girls under their clothes during the wave cycle in the wave pool. Yeah. I had somebody come to the courthouse and stuff a $20 bill in my hand and said, here, this is to cover expenses for parking or whatever, because what you're doing here is important. There are no other journalists here who are, trying to tell the full story of what's unfolding at trial here. And that was really touching. I know that just the fact that somebody took time out of their day, because court happens in the middle of a work day, to drive down there. They didn't sit in the courtroom. They said they don't want to hear any of the details, and neither did I, to be quite honest with you. But just to stuff a 20 in my hand and say, this is for parking or whatever, just thank you for being here. It's really motivating. It might seem like a small gesture, But for me as a journalist, incredibly motivating to know that the work we're doing matters.
Oh, Sheila, 100%. When you're having money stuffed into your hands like that, to me, it's flattering, it's humbling. It's an experience I never had before. In fact, I got to tell you, in a way, I kind of felt like a male pole dancer at the Zanzibar, just strangers coming up to me and stuffing money in my hands. What a feeling.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't get used to that feeling, David. How are you? Okay, we should get to the rest of these super chats because people are giving them to us and we need to get through them, and we only have 20 minutes left in the show.
Oh, no.
Okay, we've got one from Douglas Poole, gives us $10. Says, see the Buffalo Chronicle Trudeau stories today. Trudeau and Sophie split, announced Trudeau did sign a $2.5 million shut-up contract for getting caught with underage girl at Grey School. I think you mean Point Grey Academy. Girl's father confirmed it. The Buffalo Chronicle, I don't know if it's fake news or not, but what I will tell you is they publish everything without sources, without citations. There's no names, and it's all unnamed sources. So I would never get away with publishing something like that. They say that someone has said about a $2.5 million shut-up contract. Well, where is it? You can, if you've seen it, you can always publish it without the details, but they never publish anything. So I'm very, very 99.9% skeptical of everything that they publish. And here's the thing. We know Trudeau's bad. We don't need to be making up fake news about him. There's enough things out there that are so bad. And if the Buffalo Chronicle put the work into filing ATIPs that they do into filing unnamed, unsourced stories without documents that probably don't exist, well, if they filed those access to information requests and then read them, they would probably be further ahead. And I just think they completely lack credibility. I know people desperately want what they publish to be true. And I think the people at Buffalo Chronicle rely on the fact that people desperately want what they publish to be true. And so that gives them reach, and by giving them reach also gives them the ability to charge advertising. That's what they're relying on. They're relying on the fact that people really, really hate Justin Trudeau. Yeah, look, I don't like him either, but I don't need to make things up. There's enough true things out there that are awful.
That's right. You don't want to frame a guilty man, as the saying goes. This periodical reminds me, Sheila, of basically Frank magazine in its heyday in the 90s. And I remember I was reading a newspaper story about Frank. It was very entertaining and amusing, and they were interviewing the editor of Frank of that time, and he said a great quote. He said, "I would say 50% of our stories in Frank are accurate. The problem is, I don't know which 50%, right?"
Yeah.
And that's the thing, as the saying goes, even a broken clock is accurate twice a day. So, I would, when it comes to the Buffalo Chronicle, I would take those stories with a shovelful of salt, for sure.
Yes. Yes, and on some level, I think whoever's publishing the Buffalo Chronicle, because there's no byline, right? Like if you can't put your name to it, if you can't even say this is published by staff or whatever. That's right. I mean, it's almost like it's designed to discredit conservatives because we just dislike Justin Trudeau so much that we're willing to believe everything. And I don't like that. I don't like the idea that this publication would take advantage of either naivety in some instances, but more often than not, desperation. I think that's just the sleaziest. Anyway, that's my opinion of the Buffalo Chronicle.
So what you're saying, it's less buffalo and more bull. See what I did there? That's another Steve Lombardi pat on the back.
Well done, David. Okay, we've got one from Quarantine 2020. Gives us $5 Canadian. I don't see a super chat, but thank you very much. That's very generous. We've got one from Hillary Waugh. Gives us $5. Time to reopen the country. Mental health, suicide on the rise. Double standards for people. Churches need to reopen. Chain stores closing. Enough is enough. Yes, Hillary. I actually have a petition. It's at letuswork.ca, and it calls on all levels of government to open the economy back up, to definitely focus on the vulnerable, focus on that 82 or 84% of the deaths that are happening in nursing homes. Send all the reinforcements and emphasis to protect the vulnerable and let the rest of the world get back to work. Because, and one of the points I made in one of my most recent videos on letuswork.ca is that these are entry-level jobs just disappearing from the economy. It's retail, it's restaurants, the places with almost zero liquidity. They're disappearing. And it's not just the small mom and pop stores now. These are the huge chain stores, the franchises, Aldo, Reitman's, restaurant chains like Nando's. They're just disappearing. And the problem is that, sure, yeah, they're entry-level jobs. These people who work in these places, they don't pay a lot of income tax. But here's the thing about an entry-level job. That's your stepping stone to a career. It's how people learn the job skills to move forward with their life. And we're going to have an entire generation of people who don't have access to an entry-level job. And I think that's going to be catastrophic for our economy in the future. So this isn't just a now problem. This is a snowball that's going to keep getting out of control for a very, very long time unless we find a way to reopen the economy and get these people back to work and save some small stores, but also major chain retailers too.
Oh, I agree, Sheila. You know, even before anyone had ever heard the term Wuhan virus, we were seeing stories, weren't we, of is this the death of the shopping mall, right? Because of the move to online. I fear how many bricks and mortar retailers can come back, because one thing this virus pandemic lockdown has done, it has driven an entire demographic of people who never would have shopped online. And I'm generalizing here. I'm thinking mainly older people, right? And now maybe they become comfortable with online shopping. They realize I don't need to go to the mall. And like you said, it's not just the mom and pop stores. It's major chains filing for Chapter 11. This has been... It makes me mad and sad at the same time, Sheila, because we know this came out of China, and yet everyone in this government is going out of their way not to blame China, but praise China, and they have caused trillions and trillions of economic damage the world over. And what happens? Well, you mentioned the word Taiwan in terms of Trudeau thanking them in a conference for PPE, and China goes, we want our pandas back, and screw the fact that there's 3 years left on the Calgary Zoo contract. But anyways, Mr. Producer barked in my ear, super chat again.
No, we've got a lot of super chats. But yeah, I just want to point out that not only did China definitely do this, but how our local governments reacted to it is just as much of a problem. For example, why is it perfectly safe to buy underwear and shoes in a crowded Walmart, but you couldn't do it at Aldo or Victoria's Secret?
Exactly.
Now those two chains are going under. Doesn't make any sense. Why can you buy office appropriate slacks at Walmart, but you couldn't do it at Reitman's? And now, you know, Walmart is benefiting, but all these other retailers and the jobs along with them, they're just completely going under. And sure, China is definitely responsible for the virus, but the economic devastation was exacerbated by the way our local governments reacted to it. And the only way to fix this is to open the economy back up.
And Sheila, I feel your pain, sister. I mean, like Lady Menzoid, I bet you're just champing at the bit to get back into Victoria's Secret and get some new lingerie. We hope.
David, let's just move on. My lingerie is Long John's. I live in Alberta, okay? We've got one from Kathleen Irish, gives us $5 Canadian, says, love this witty, fun duet. Oh, thank you very much. That's very kind. Isn't it funny how Kathleen just paid us $5 to give us a compliment? It's interesting how the world works. Okay, we got one from MVP, gives us $5 Canadian, says, the rebels have spoken. We love the Sheila David duo. Oh, thank you. Another $5 to give us a compliment. That's very kind. We've got one from Kyle McGregor, $10 Canadian. I don't see a super chat, but that's very generous. We've got one from Flat Earth Data, $2.79, says, and Cirrus Parsa versus Google LLC lawsuit. I know absolutely nothing about that, but I will Google it as soon as we get off the air here. I always end up down like a Google YouTube rabbit hole for the first 30 minutes after I get off the live stream, and it's probably doesn't do a lot for my productivity levels throughout the day hosting these live streams on Tuesday and Thursday, but that's okay. We've got one from Jose Sanzana, gives us $20.99 Canadian. Went to get my hair done yesterday. Salon was shut by BC Health Department. Owner is madder than a hornet and has hired a lawyer. Communist contact for their story. Yeah, I see that there are some people who actually I saw today. There's a gym owner in Lethbridge, Alberta. I think it's Lethbridge, maybe Medicine Hat, one of those southern cities. And they've just said, no, look, we're reopening June 1st.
Good.
We'll follow health protocols. Yeah. You can come and try to shut us down, but you're going to have to show us how we're not doing something to keep the public safe and come and get us. But we're opening June 1st because we provide a service to the public and we need to save our business. So I don't know. Good luck to them.
I agree. And by the way, when Jose mentions that he's madder than a hornet, I have to take another knock at China here, Sheila, because evidently that's the source for a new insect species that have come into North America. You know, there's two words I hate. One is murder and the other is hornet. But when you combine them and you have murder hornets? Ooh, that's even worse than killer bees in my book, Sheila. So, yeah, another thing to thank China for.
I just saw the other day that I think it's cicadas. I don't know. It's some bug that it gets too cold in Alberta to have. But after 17 years under the ground, they're coming out this year. Oh. Just swarms of them. And it's just, okay, so we've had plague, pestilence. I don't know. Get right with Jesus. Anyway.
Sheila, can 2020 possibly get any worse? The pandemic, you know, the plane shot down by the Iranians. It just, oh, good Lord, look at that. Yikes. And just before our Taco Tuesday lunch here at the Rebel headquarters, I don't know if I can, put that down. I mean, it's just so much misery in one calendar year alone, and we're not even halfway through it. Jeez.
The only way it can get worse.
Okay.
And I'm worried because I've seen the request for procurement. So that's like the government call out for contracts for supplies or services. The only way this can get worse is if there is a fall election. And I've seen the Elections Canada request for procurements for like pencils and all kinds of things like election supplies. And it seems like they're headed into elections readiness. And that worries me because Justin Trudeau is very popular right now because, I mean, he's just making it rain from the money tree right now. So there's a lot of unemployed people who see Justin Trudeau as the only way that they're going to have the ability to have a little walking around money. And that worries me. And yep. I think that is probably the only way that 2020 can get worse is if Justin Trudeau heads to election, and it will undoubtedly win a majority because the Conservative Party right now is just a complete and total dumpster fire.
Yep, two words worse than murder hornet even, Sheila. Liberal majority. And I think it's going to happen. Oh my
I do too. And it's not the Liberals' fault. It will be the Conservative Party's fault. We've got one from Ali C. Gives us $20 Canadian. Keep up the great work, Rebel News. Love the hat, David. Yeah, it's growing on me too. It's kind of a Dick Tracy kind of thing. It's I won't say debonair, but it is definitely better than the hair.
Oh, well, thank you. So should I put a little card that says press in it and like go completely 1930s?
Yes. Why haven't you done that?
Because my penmanship is so awful.
I don't know. Get one of the graphics guys in the office to make you up a little press card and stick it in there. Independent journalist press card.
Okay, I'll get my trained broadcast professional Justin to get on that right after lunch. He's nodding his head no.
No. Justin has
see what I'm saddled with here, Sheila?
Justin has an actual job, and part of it involves herding cats right now, trying to keep you and I on topic with 7 minutes left in the show. And we've talked about loosely maybe two things that were on our list. Okay, we've got Stoner Crew 420 gives us $20.99. Why do we even prep for these shows? Why do we even bother? Okay, $20.99. Rebel News is real journalist. Thanks you very much. You're welcome. We've got one from Bill DeBurger. gives us $10 Canadian. Thanks for the splash of cold water regarding the Buffalo Chronicle. I was buying into it. I know you really want to believe it because, Justin Trudeau is awful and unethical, but we know he's unethical because of the ethics reports against him. We don't need to make things up. And Buffalo Chronicle is benefiting from your desperation to get rid of Justin Trudeau, and I think that is absolutely the lowest common denominator.
And Sheila, in this business, we have to tell our viewers that even if it's not made up, that's not good enough. We have to prove it, right?
Right. It happens to us all the time. We get somebody who has a tip and they will tell us all the facts. But if they can't produce paperwork or come on camera or phone recordings or whatever, we just can't run with it. It's just not enough to say, well, this person said this. That's just not good enough. That's completely unethical. And we can even know and believe it to be true, but we just can't run a story on it. We've got one from Bruiser Battersby. Holy moly, gives us $50 Canadian.
Thank you.
What are your thoughts on asthmatic employees being forced to wear masks for 8 hours a day so customers can feel a false sense of security? And a huge thank you to the entire Rebel team for being a beacon of truth in a world drowning in misinformation. David, you're the mask wearer. You tell me.
You know what? I'm not trying to dodge the question, but I think that is a question for a labor relations lawyer. And boy, are those guys in demand these days, because it's an incredible query. If this mask is causing an asthma attack, or it's causing so much discomfort, what are my rights as an employee? I mean, we know you have rights not to work in an unsafe environment, but by the wearing of a mask, if you have a special medical condition, does that make it unsafe to you? There's some great labor lawyers in Toronto, like Howard Levitt. I would love to see what a legal opinion on that would be, Sheila.
Yeah, me too. There are people with medical conditions who are getting forgotten in all of this, and a non-surgical mask, okay, is that more effective than standing 6 feet away or behind plexiglass? I don't know. We've got one from George Watts, gives us $2.79 Canadian. Today in New Brunswick, voting on mandatory vaccine. Okay, I promise I will pay attention to that. We've got one from Douglas Hoole, gives us $5. I will take your info to heart. They said they reviewed the e-document sent to father in error. Trudeau is the worst leader the East has ever elected. Again, the Buffalo Chronicle, if they can't publish that e-doc with information redacted the way that we normally do, then I wouldn't even consider it to be anything remotely truthful. We have one from Richard Summers, gives us $20.99. Lack of democratic process at the political party level, aka Jim Karahalios. Follow up on this until all political parties have democratic principles required of them in order to be registered. You know what? I'm not even a stickler on parties that have to have certain processes in place in order to be registered. I think if you can round up enough signatures, this is a free country. Register your kooky looky party, whatever you want. But as far as change within the Conservative Party, the membership has to be demanding better of the party. This is outrageous. Why they have a handful of people deciding who thousands upon thousands of people can vote for. And let's remember, Jim Karahalios sold memberships for the Conservative Party of Canada, filling up their war chest so that the people he brought into the party could vote for him. And then the higher up said, oh, no, wait. We're going to keep your memberships. We're going to keep all those people in the fold. But Jim, you're out. Thanks very much. It's garbage.
Sheila, I am seething about what happened to Jim. And what's more, it is yet another embarrassing, self-inflicted wound by the Conservative Party of Canada. So unnecessary. And look at the publicity they're getting out of it. And that's why, folks, when you say, oh, you two, are you crazy? A Trudeau majority? Yeah, I think if an election happens in fall, I would be shocked if it wasn't, to tell you the truth, because what's plan B at this stage?
And you've got people who would be Erin O'Toole supporters who are saying, I don't want anything to do with this party. So it's actually hurting the entire leadership campaign, because there are people who are principled conservatives who say, look, I'm not even a Jim supporter, but I don't like that you did him dirty, and I don't want any part of this.
Yeah, 100%.
We've got one, oh God, we've got a minute left in the show. We've got one from Proud Boys Calgary, 279 Canadian. VS going under is a bad day for all men. Justin, I don't know what VS is.
Victoria's Secret, Sheila.
Oh, Victoria's Secret.
How could you not know that?
I buy my lingerie at the farm supply store. I wear long johns. Okay. We've got one from Jonathan Newhook. He gives us $20 Canadian. Just ordered a copy of The Libranos. I'm looking forward to it. Love the show, guys. Great work. Thank you very much, Jonathan. And thank you for supporting the work that we do here at Rebel News by purchasing Ezra's book. We've got one from Derek G, $10 Canadian. Can any Conservative Party ever win elections with the demographic change caused by the dramatic rise of immigration threshold? Here's what I think. And Jason Kenney, to his credit, is very good at this. He is really good at ethnic outreach, because a lot of the immigrant communities coming into Canada are culturally conservative. Yes. And he's really great at communicating that to them, that they are very family-centric. They believe in parents as the first educators. They don't believe in gender theory. They want to be able to worship how they want and raise their children how they want. And Jason Kenney was Stephen Harper's fixer when it came to ethnic outreach and ethnic communities. And I personally have seen a little Chinese lady jump a table to hug Jason Kenney, because he was very, very good at articulating that while it might be the Liberals who let immigrant communities into the country en masse, but it is the Conservative Party who is going to protect the fact that you can raise your children and live your life however you want. And the Conservatives right now, they're terrible at this.
Yeah, I agree. And Sheila, there's another element to this as well. I met an Indian gentleman, someone from India, who emigrated to Canada 3 years ago, and I had a fascinating conversation with him. And his biggest beef was the lack of controls on immigration. You should have heard him tee off on Roxham Road. And the reason why, folks, is that he came to Canada to get a better life, to live in a better country, and he doesn't want to see the dismantling of our walls, our sovereignty, to let just everybody in willy-nilly. He went through all the hoops. He was, legal and vetted, and he resents the fact that the Trudeau Liberals are concocting this scheme, which I think truly is, Sheila, in their minds, we're going to turn a blind eye. Come on in. We'll even have the RCMP turn into bellhop people for you. Oh, and by the way, the quid pro quo, every 4 years when it comes to going into that little voting booth, just put a check mark beside the red box. That's all. Have a nice day. Super chats.
Yes, super chats. And it was the Chinese community in BC that is leading the charge against the abuse of the birthright citizenship loophole with anchor babies. It's the Chinese community who came in the right way that are completely against fellow Chinese people abusing the system.
Amazing.
We've got one from Craig McDonald, gives us $6.99. David needs that press card in his hat when people ask for his accreditation. Just point to the hat. Yeah, the hat or the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, whatever. We've got one from Richard Summers, gives us $2.79 Canadian. Read the case against David Suzuki. Great read. Thank you. That was my second bestseller. It's sitting on the shelf over there. And I think we are 3 minutes past the hour. Oh, Justin, very quick on the draw there. 3 minutes past the hour, and we are finally all caught up on the super chats.
Well, that's fantastic. Oh, that was the fastest hour ever, Sheila. I'll let you jump in the car and whip down to Victoria's Secret to buy your new set of long johns for the remainder of spring in Alberta. And folks, thank you from the bottom of my heart for tuning in, and a special big thank you to all of those who gave us those super chats. We don't get government funding, and nor would we take it if it were offered. So until Thursday, we're going to sign off. Ezra Levant will be in this chair tomorrow. And in the meantime, stay safe.